Well, welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks
for the invite.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Another episode of the Aviation Growth Podcast. I'm here with Tyler. Tyler, why don't you give us, let's start, maybe you could give us a quick intro into who you are, your company, and what you do.
I am an Englewood native. It's where I live now. It's where our company is. It's where my dad was from. And when we first talked, I told you, like, my grandfather, who I never met, but he was, like, you know, rumored to be P.O. Box number 3 or something.
Yeah.
So I've been there pretty much my whole life. Out of high school, I got my real estate's license, and this is like 2009. I graduated.
Okay.
Got my real estate's license. It was a terrible time to be in real estate.
Yeah.
This was like coming off the 2008, 2009
Yeah, sure.
recession.
Yep.
So it didn't quite work out. You know, that was purely a commission job. So I was able to get a gig pretty early on. I was 20, and I was able to get a gig with a jet sales company that wasn't far from us. Hired me on at $8 an hour, which I was thrilled about. I was loving that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the only job I could get. No degree or anything. But anyway, so I started working there, and you know, it's just one of those things. It just kind of worked out. You know, made a couple sales, and then before I know it, I was just like, yeah, I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
So then I started AvSky Jets, and it's the same thing that we still do today. It's real estate for airplanes is kind of what it amounts to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we get listings, advertise them, work with buyers,
Yeah.
find airplanes for them, and that's really the crux of what we're doing day in and day out.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, like, you get into this industry, you didn't know much about it before,
Nothing.
I'm assuming.
Not a thing, no.
Yeah, and so just a couple years into it, you decide, hey, I'm going to go do this on my own. I think that's a pretty big jump. Walk me through, like, what that was like for you.
So you know, there's a lot of money in airplane sales.
Yeah, sure.
As you can imagine.
Sure.
So, and I, you know, growing up, you know, I didn't have, you know, a ton of money, so I was always like a hoarder. You know, anytime my wife would ask us to go to the movies, no, we're not going to the movies. Whenever, you know, because we dated in high school, and she would be like, whenever we'd want to meet up, my dad got me a truck. I was like, babe, this thing gets like 13 miles to the gallon. You know, gas is $4 a gallon right now.
Yeah.
This is back in like 2008.
Yep.
And I was like, you drive your Ford Focus to me,
And then
we'll hang out.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I just like, over so many years of that, I just kind of like really got into the habit of being like super frugal. Mm-hmm. And that kind of carried over even after I got into airplane sales.
Okay.
So I hit a couple big sales, you know, put away some money.
Yep.
And very low overhead. You know, I didn't have a ton of bills. I was young, no kids.
Sure.
At the time. And so then I just, you know, when I started, you know, did it on my own, I had that cushion financially, which didn't last very long. It was a little learning curve for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started my own thing, and
what were some of the obstacles in, like, I would assume that, okay, you're a young guy, you have some experience in this industry.
Yeah.
You get into starting your own business selling jets, or buying for buyers. And so to connect with people and say, hey, I'm going to do this for you, that's they're putting trust in you to carry that out for you. Big assets, bigger money.
Yeah.
How did you go about, I guess, selling I would imagine you had to sell yourself on, like, what you could do, right?
Yeah.
What was that like?
When I first started, so we subscribe to a database. It's a dealer database.
Yep.
And I was by myself at the time, and it was definitely not easy right off the bat. So I would call people and I would just say, "Hey, this is Tyler with AvSky Jets," and they're like, "You're with AvGuy who?"
Yeah, sure.
You're with who? And so it probably took me, it really just turned into a numbers game. So I just, I didn't have any trust in any client base. Most people, when they start their own company, it's usually later on after they have a big book of business.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, whether it was a smart thing to do or not, maybe I was just being reckless. Nothing. I had nothing. No clients to fall back on or anything. So I just took the approach of, hey, if I can stay committed to calling X amount of people a day, I'll connect, if I can make, 300 calls a week, however many, 1,200 calls a month.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to some people that'll listen to me. And that's pretty much what I did. And then, you make a connection and you have a sale. It's not rocket science. It's as much as I'd love to pretend that I'm like some sort of genius, it's a lot of it's a numbers game, and that's the approach I took. So,
and then as you got into that and you're like, okay, I'm just going to make X amount of calls. I'm going to eventually connect with somebody that wants to listen to me, and we're going to get something done, right?
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of buyers. There's a certain amount of sellers out there. What were, like, as you look to continue to, you were a one-man show at that point, right? Or
yes.
What was the process of bringing on, because you have a bigger team now. What was that process like?
Bringing on people?
Yeah, and growing the business.
So I'll take a step back.
Yeah.
When I was a one-man show, it was actually me and real early on, I hired, she was a contractor, but we worked together.
Sure.
She, Wendy, she's still with us today.
Okay.
It was basically just her and I. She was kind of answering phones, and now she makes calls for us and like outbound calls and stuff like that, sales calls. She's excellent at what she does. But when I was going from a one-man show, basically, because I was still the only person selling planes, to now, before I got to then, now, it was a huge learning curve, like I was talking about earlier. And I had trouble from when I started my own company. The first thing that I got to feel was like the financial stress of that. And that was something I wasn't quite prepared for. So I had figured out how to be a salesman at the last job. I figured out how to sell planes again. Numbers game, you just kind of stay at it, and things happen. But, I left my salary and took on the job I have now, which I had a salary, but it was from this account to this account.
Yeah, sure.
Circular.
Yeah.
So, and then not only that, but you're paying payroll tax on that circular money. So anyway, net negative there. I had to pay the expenses of the company, and I had to run the business. And even as a one-man, show, it's still a little bit involved.
Yeah, sure. Well, because you have to do marketing, administrative, payroll,
even as a one-man show.
Yeah, sure.
You gotta,
your expenses, all that stuff. Sure.
Yeah, I had to set up shop. Buy the equipment that I had. So that was the biggest learning curve for me, and it was a compounding negative effect because here I am trying to do this. Meanwhile, I can't go sell.
Right.
And I had burned through like $150,000 from over the course of like a 10-month period, and I hadn't sold anything because I was, focused on the business, and some of it was totally my fault. But anyway, so I was going through this period of just like watching money just go out the door, and it was like gut-wrenching.
Yeah.
Like, especially for me, growing up being so frugal, not even wanting to go to the movies.
Yeah.
To see like $10,000 a month or more go, and no prospect of it coming in.
Right.
That was pretty scary for me. And but anyway, so that's kind of when I realized like I have to I have to change something up. Like I couldn't quite pinpoint what I needed to do, but I knew I needed to do something.
Sure.
So, and Ryan, he's our director of sales now.
Yeah, sure.
I always knew he would be good at it, good at selling planes, or selling anything really.
He's a sales guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're typical sales guy.
Yeah.
He's awesome though. But anyway, I was always hesitant to bring like friends and family into business. You know, you're told from a young age, if you go into business, don't bring friends and family.
Yeah.
So I stayed away from that. But I was struggling, and I couldn't quite pinpoint why. I kind of knew why, but and I remember the day that I decided to hire him. That I was like, okay, that's it. I got to hire the guy. I was working on like a computer program type thing, and I was putting a ton of time into it. And this is probably part of the reason I wasn't selling. I was doing this computer program. I had this idea that I was going to build out this computer program, which was going to like dictate where we would put our efforts, with our personnel. So, step one was to build, in my mind, just build this computer program. Step two was to hire on a bunch of people, and then this thing would kind of do its magic. And, the reality of how you grow, at least from how it worked for me, was that I had to go in stages, and I wasn't doing it right. But anyway, the day I decided to hire him, I was working on this thing, put a ton of time into it, and he comes over, and he's like, hey, what are you doing? And I'm like, hey, I'm just working on this computer program. And so he walks in my room. It was our spare bedroom. He walks in, and there was these planes on the screen, and they were represented on a bar chart. I had them all on the bar chart based on how much they were worth.
Mm-hmm.
Walks over, and keep in mind, this is something I put a ton of time into.
Yeah.
I mean, hundreds of hours. He walks over, and he looks at it for 1 second. He's like, I'll sell that one. And it was like the one with the biggest bar, the most expensive plane. And it was like in that moment that it like burst my bubble. And I was like, he's right. It doesn't, like at this stage of things, for me, it doesn't have to be too complicated.
Sure.
And he brought that element that I was lacking. And that's when I knew I had to get a different perspective. Because, you have a spectrum of like where things need to be, and you can't be too far to either side of it.
Sure.
You have to have a little bit of balance. And he brought that balance to me. And I mean, it wasn't too long after he started. I mean, maybe a couple weeks, and it was like, yeah, we're gonna, this is gonna work.
Gonna make it.
Yeah.
Well, I think, I think talking to a lot of people, whether they're just getting started or maybe they got things off of the ground and now they're trying to kind of take things to the next level.
Yeah.
I think that it's easy to get distracted with, there's so many, when you're running your own business, there's so many different things that you really have to juggle. You're just constantly juggling all these different aspects of the business. And sometimes it's really hard to, like, you get caught up on something and it could be a great idea, but sometimes it's the wrong time to be worrying about it. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, if we're just getting kicked off, like the most important thing probably for you guys was to just sell some, sell some planes.
Make some money. Yeah.
Make some money, get things moving, and then you could kind of come back to
and then reevaluate it. Yeah. I mean, so like a lot of the things that I was trying to do with the technology and things like that were super important things to do.
Right.
Not at the stage I was in, though. Not as a one-man operation, effectively.
Yeah.
So you get a little scale, then kind of revisit that sort of thing. But for me, that was a little bit of a learning curve, and again, just the financial side of it.
Yeah.
Getting used to having to kind of bear that cost.
Yeah. Spend money to make money.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Or in my case, spend money to not make any money.
But hopefully you've turned that corner.
Yeah, we've turned the corner. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Good. And so did you, like, as you're along this journey and you get to the point where you're like, hey, I've spent like over $100,000, $150,000 of my own money, and like, was there a time where you had said, maybe I need to go find like a job somewhere?
I had nightmares about that.
Yeah.
Legit had nightmares about that. In like probably up until maybe a year ago, they would still kind of trinkle in occasionally. But yeah, I can safely say I don't think I've had a dream like that in probably the past year. So
that's good.
There was a bit. Was that?
Nah. I was gonna say you have a little bit more clarity now. That
yeah. Well, you know, just like anything, when you jump into something new, you're gonna stub your toe. You're gonna have to figure out find your way to make something work.
Sure.
But my wife, she was like, because as I was going through this period, she was going to go back to work, and she did go back to work. So, I mean, she was, because I was sweating, because not only, I had this one deal that I was kind of, as I was going through this 10-month period of just like bleeding my account, this one deal was my saving grace, and I was like, Lord, please. Not only it ended up happening, but it happened in the worst way you could imagine. So it was a weird deal where I was selling this plane, and this guy, even though we were the listing agent, ended up effectively calling the owner directly, going around us completely. And they weren't going to pay our commission on it. And then that's when I was like, okay, not only were they not going to pay our commission, the guy was like, the guy who went around me was like threatening me with like a lawsuit, basically. Anyway, I don't want to get into the weeds, but
sure.
He was trying to bully me, you know? And that's kind of when it was like, not only did I just burn through a bunch of money, but this deal I was banking on isn't going to happen. Not only is it not going to happen, the guy's going to sue me, and I don't have any money to go defend myself.
Sure.
Even though it was frivolous to begin with. He was just throwing his weight around. But anyway, fortunately, I was able to get through that, and I ended up getting the commission on it. I mean, I was about to go jump in a plane, go knock on his door, and just beg him, please.
Yeah.
You don't understand what I'm going through.
I would imagine your nightmares that night were pretty vivid.
Yeah. That was when my wife went back to work, and then that's probably when my nightmare started. But anyway, so I ended up getting the commission on that one, which was a huge boost. And that was about the time that I started getting a little bit of traction. I started figuring out the changes that I needed to make. And then it wasn't shortly after that I brought on Ryan.
Yeah.
And he popped off a deal pretty quickly, and then I started kind of getting in my rhythm. And then ever since then, it's been pretty good.
Cool.
So,
and how are things going now? And especially like in the
wife isn't working anymore.
That's good.
Well, I say that.
Yeah.
She's at home with the kids.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't trade her.
Yeah.
You know, I go home where I'm lucky enough to work close to where I live.
Yeah.
I come home for lunch. I'm there for 15 minutes, and I'm like, all right, babe, I got to get back to the office.
Get back to it. Yeah.
I got to go back to work. Got a real demanding day.
Yeah.
And kids are crying. No,
yeah.
It's great.
I have 3 kids, and last year we started working at home, probably in the summer, and then I've been home up until August this year, and I took a little bit of time off in between, what I'm doing now and my last thing. And come August timeframe, especially the kids being home all summer long, I was like, okay, I'm getting an office nearby. I'm not sure what I'm doing yet, but like it's going to be an office. My wife's like, well, what are you going to do there? I'm like, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
we'll figure things
something
out.
really important.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and so, she's
got a harder job than I do.
Yeah, no, for sure. So like looking back at like the last, let's say 18 months with, COVID, pandemic, how's business been through all of this, and what are you seeing like today with the market? From what I could see, it's kind of crazy.
So, I mean, you've probably seen like inflation news, things like that. I mean, airplane prices have inflated like as much as anything I've seen. I don't know about like on a percentage basis, but so I mean, as far as that goes, we've benefited a lot from that inflation, price inflation anyway. So
sure,
like and this has got nothing to do with us, but we bought a plane for a client, and actually I've got a plane in contract right now with a client that we sold to him. He took it home, broke down on him first day. I was like, hey, don't worry about it. We can go sell it for like $400,000 more.
Yeah.
And he's like, really? I was like, yeah. He's like, okay, let's do it. So now that plane's under contract for exactly what I said. So, I mean, and that's not the only scenario that I mean, we've benefited a lot from that. Sure. Because we get to roll over the deals, because as long as the prices are going up, people will sell them, and there's always someone willing to buy right now. But even before the inflation, the price increases really kicked in. When COVID first hit, I mean, we've been super fortunate with it. So when it first hit, I don't know if you remember, but do you follow like the stock market much? Okay, so in March, it would have been like March of 2020.
Yep.
When it first started becoming news, and the stock market, dropped. I forget exactly what it dropped from. Anyway, it was like 30,000 to 18,000 or something like that, like really quick. And there was crickets when that happened. Sure. So, but the second it rebounded, I mean, it was like we were like inextricably tied to the stock market. Once it rebounded, it was like everything came back and came back with like anger. Yeah.
Like we need a plane now.
Yeah, exactly. And so we kicked butt 2020. I mean, that was our best year as of last year.
Yeah.
So, because I think, you can kind of speculate as to why that's the case. I mean, you probably have a lot of people that could have afforded it that just didn't spend the money, but with COVID, they don't want to fly on the airlines.
Right.
Maybe they don't want to charter anymore. Who knows? But whatever the case is, a lot of people bought airplanes.
Yeah.
And then this year, 2021, is really when we started seeing those price increases and took advantage of that. This year, I haven't run the numbers yet, but we've got to be beating last year by like a good margin.
Nice.
So I mean, and a lot of that is, again, it's not even having anything to do with us. I could beat my chest if I wanted to, but it's really got nothing to do with us. It's just rolling over the same deals over and over.
Yeah.
And
is there a specific like segment of the market that you guys feel like you specialize in, particular types of aircraft that you're able to connect buyers and sellers pretty well in?
Yeah. Citations are going to be a huge one. Any kind of citation, CJ, Ultra, Encore, although there's nothing for sale right now in the Encores. Any kind of citation. It's as much having a good network of dealers as it is having a good network of end users. And like, for instance, if I've got a client right now with a CJ4,
okay,
he won't let me list it. I've been begging him. I don't know what his deal is, but I'll probably text him when I leave here.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I know a good network of dealers in that world, so I can call 4 people and probably have 4 buyers lined up for it, and I don't have to go through the process of marketing or anything like that, or waiting for a buyer to call me. So us being specialized in a certain area is as much of us knowing a good dealer network in those planes as it is to knowing actual clients. But light jet, single pilot airplanes, that's probably where we specialize. We hired a guy, Brendan. He's doing great. I kind of put him on turboprops, King Airs, TBMs, Meridians. I'd like to kind of get a little bit more into that, so I've kind of put him on that.
Sure.
And so we're getting more into the turboprops, and then from there, I mean, we'd like to get into expand into all the different segments, but historically it's been citations.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
How has I feel like a lot of the business is built on networking and connections. How is that? Has anything changed in that way in regards to, like, I know you're active on LinkedIn. How has that been for you?
So, I awesome.
Yeah.
Can I answer with one word?
Sure.
No, it's been really good. So, like, I never really put much value into that stuff. It was just, I guess, a perception or something. Like,
Sure.
I don't know. It's like when you hear your dad yell at you, "Oh, what are you guys doing on that technology
or you're
stuff?
scrolling.
Yeah, what are you doing? Get off your phone." I mean, I own a parts business because of it now. I'm talking to you.
Sure.
In a big part because of it. So, and like I had a guy today message me. He's like, "Oh, we're looking for a Falcon, a Gulfstream. We'll see if it goes anywhere. But like, if it does, those are potentially huge deals."
Right.
I mean, so yeah, I mean, that has been really helpful in ways that, I wouldn't have even really expected.
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.
Go Microsoft.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. My dad, probably like, I'd say 2 to 3 years ago, he was always like, put away that goddamn phone. Like, what are you doing? And now I think he's worse than I am. Like, he's like a LinkedIn fiend, and is like, and he's a business guy, he's an entrepreneur, and like, he's really looking at this saying like, this is where business is going to get done in the future. Right. And so, I've seen it, it's connected us. So it's pretty cool to see that.
Yeah.
But, you had mentioned the parts company.
Yeah.
So you recently acquired a parts company. Tell me how that all came about.
So, like I was saying earlier, scrolling Facebook, I don't even know what the heck I was doing. It might have been, I got to think back now, it would have been September. I got it in September. You know what? I was telling you how we had that period where it was just crickets.
Yeah.
I think I connected with him then.
Okay.
Because it really did. We weren't getting calls when the stock market went down. We weren't getting phone calls. So I was like constantly scrolling Facebook Marketplace, and I'd always show my wife, "Hey babe, let's buy this thing. Let's we can probably like sell it. For like maybe 10%.
Yeah.
She's like, "Babe, it's gonna be fine. You're just doing this because you're not getting calls at work."
Yeah.
I was like, maybe you're right. Anyway,
right.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm pretty sure it was then I was scrolling through. I saw this guy selling his parts business, and he wanted way too much money for it, and I told him. But anyway,
yeah.
We ended up working out a deal. We're still friends. I'd like to meet him, honestly. I still keep in touch with him. I text him every now and again. But I had messaged him, and I was like, hey, tell me a little bit about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, right now we get about 3,000 parts. They're all listed, and he used eBay. That's how he sells them.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'll sell you all of it. And what I liked about it, not knowing anything about parts and not knowing anybody that knows anything about parts, is that he had this stuff all online. Mm-hmm. It was all, the website was up, everything was on eBay, descriptions, prices. Yeah. He had priced it all out. So it was turnkey from that perspective. Yeah. So I like that because we could make a little revenue having to do nothing while we learned it.
Doing all of it, yeah.
Yeah, while I was doing the other, the other thing, and while Jason, who I brought on to run that, could figure out what was going on. So I didn't want to make the same mistake I made with my business, which was going into it with like nothing.
Yeah.
So it was nice. We got all the stuff. Like I said, flew him into Billings. He got the biggest Penske truck we could get, loaded the stuff up. The guys helped him. We got it all. Actually, he still has some of our stuff, actually, now that I think about it. But it wouldn't fit in the truck. Anyway, he drove back down, and, that's pretty much the story of how we got it.
Yeah. And so how has that been since you got that, now you transition into also selling parts? How does that change the business? Like, and has it changed your focus, or have you brought on Jason's been able to?
Jason is, he's been like a godsend to run that part of it. Mm-hmm. It hasn't changed much. It's not like a huge, if I were like guessing what the revenue split is between the brokerage and the parts, it's probably 90-10.
Okay.
Something like that.
Right.
So I don't let it take up too much of my focus, especially how well he's doing running it. What is nice is it's the only steady paycheck I can count on. Mm-hmm. Every month since we've got it, it's turned a little bit of a profit.
Sure.
And up until then, it's like with sales, they're playing sales. If you go a month or 2 months without a sale, you got nothing.
Right.
This is much more steady. Mm-hmm. So that's the only thing that I think I can kind of, not the only thing, but it's something I appreciate is I can bank on a certain amount of revenue.
Yeah.
Each month, and I can kind of plan accordingly.
Sure.
But it hasn't really changed our brokerage business, other than there is a few instances where we have clients that will need a part and we can source it out. Yeah. So, kind of like I was saying, we had that, a client who had a CJ, whole deal was held up because he needed one $1,800 part.
Yeah.
Which on airplanes is nothing. And, they couldn't supply it to him, but we jumped on the lines, made a couple calls, that we would not have been able to make if we hadn't been in that world, that space. So, sent him over the part, put it on. It was an emergency blowdown bottle.
Yeah.
And did the deal.
Cool.
So, from that perspective, there's a little bit of crossover, and I'd like there to be a lot more.
Yeah.
So
is that an area that you think you'll invest more in, is the part side of things? And
yeah, I would say so. So there's only there's only, at least any way that we've found, there's only so much money we can put into it. Mm-hmm. Because Jason loves working alone. He won't let me hire anyone. I'm working on that. But there's only so many parts we can buy at auction. Mm-hmm. So I think the next step is probably going to be parting out airplanes.
Yeah.
That's probably the next phase of things. The issue right now is we have a a shop where we warehouse our parts, but we don't have enough space to basically board the fuselages, the wings, and everything else after they've been parted out. So we don't have any space to do that. I've been thinking about building a warehouse and where we could have enough space to do that.
Sure.
But we're getting there.
Gotcha.
One day at a time.
Yeah. How about with the aircraft side of the business? Any future plans there? How does that look for you guys?
Yeah. We want to get into more inventory deals. Like, so for instance, kind of like what I've been saying is right now we make our money on commissions, more or less.
Sure.
I'd like to get into buying them and flipping them.
Right.
You know, that takes guts though.
Yes.
I haven't had those nightmares
in a bit.
So
they might come back on something like that.
Yeah. So it's like, maybe give myself just a little bit of time, but we are working on a couple deals like that. So I think I'm ready to take the plunge. But we want to buy planes, and we have one that we're looking at buying to put on charter. That'd be nice too.
Yeah.
So if you ever need a charter, holler at your boy.
Sure.
You know, friends and family discount.
All right. Sounds good.
But we do want to get in the charter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool.
So,
anything else you want to hit on today? I mean, it sounds like things are going good. I'm happy to hear, it's cool to hear the story of just going out there and starting this thing from scratch and maybe going a little bit backwards first before you got traction. So it's cool to see things are going. Yeah, some bumps and bruises. For you guys. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's been fun. I guess. You didn't really ask a question, but Aviation Growth Podcast, I guess the only advice I could give people to help them grow and what's worked for me is again, just kind of like bringing on people that give you a different perspective. So we both know this is a microphone, it doesn't having 10 people with different perspectives doesn't add any value there. But when you start getting to things that have no right or wrong answer, what's worked for me and the thing that I could suggest to people is get people that give you a different perspective. That's what Ryan brought when he came on with me, gave me a different perspective. And that's a two-way street, by the way. He'd be completely lost without me.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, he couldn't change the water in our water dispenser yesterday. So you just open a door and change it. Anyway, I love him. But he brought that perspective to me, and when it comes to the parts sales business, Jason, our minds just tick differently. I like to kind of look at the big picture, don't really, focus on the details so much, but he's super detail oriented.
Right.
He can tell you, he can tell you anything when it comes to an airplane, but he can tell you how many rivets are on a particular part. He can assemble, he could probably take the parts that we have and assemble an airplane. Mm-hmm. It'd look goofy as hell, but he could put it together and it would probably be functional and you could use it and it'd be safe.
Yeah.
But that's where I lack, but I fill in the gaps that he lacks and he fills in the gaps that I lack.
Sure.
And the same thing with Ryan in the parts sales business and even the other guys in the office too. Everyone kind of, adds their, helps you see blind spots that you just maybe don't always catch on your own.
For sure.
And that's kind of, sometimes that's the hardest thing for people to do is just to set your ego aside. You don't know everything, lean on other people for ideas and listen to them and actually not just listen, but actually, act on them.
Act on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, as you're going, there's only so much that you can do as an individual person. Yeah. And so while you can really work yourself to death, as you start bringing on people obviously alleviates some of the pains that you have, allows you to focus on different things. But surrounding yourself with a well-rounded group of people really can multiply your success. And a lot of people, they this can sometimes struggle with listening to like outside
I was
opinions.
guilty of it.
Yeah. But it's, and not, you can't take everybody's opinion and everybody's, feedback. There's certain things that you just, run with and do it your way. But, just having that constant, like, okay, we're going in this direction, but having feedback along the way from other individuals can really help your cause.
Yeah. And like people that have different perspectives, like Ryan and I, if we're working on a deal, we're gonna be seeing completely different things. We're gonna be looking at the same problem and seeing different parts of that problem.
Right.
And that's kind of how we're able to do so well. Like, he's always leaning on me with his deals. And I see things that he misses and, the other way around. And, he gets a lot done because of it. And it's better for our clients too. It's not all about us.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it's better for everybody. Like, client wants to sell an airplane. Well, it doesn't just sell itself. It's a problem you have to solve, whether that's through marketing and trying to like generate, as much, online viewing or paperback viewing, or whether that's, again, calling through dealer networks, however you got to do it. It's a problem you got to solve. So it's good for clients too. It's not just like all about us.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. How, did you have anybody like outside of your organization that helped you through some of these things, whether they were in aviation or outside? God.
Jesus.
Okay.
Through my hard times.
Yeah.
Probably realistically, my wife was, because that's the sort of thing, like when you're struggling, the hardest thing is like, you kind of look for moral support, because it's like, you can't solve your problem. And like, so for instance, like when I was having my struggles and the sales side of it, the business, it's like, all right, I can't figure out how to solve my problems right now. Like I can make more calls, because that was my approach, right? A numbers game. But that's for whatever reason not working. Is it because I'm not dedicated enough to keep doing that? Or am I not pitching something the right way? So like when you've exhausted all those options and you can't solve your problem in the real world, you just look for someone like to give you moral support. And like for me, that was her. So, and it was more than just moral support. She's like, babe, I'll go back to work. And she did, which was good for me, because that at least alleviated some stress financially. Sure. Like because we always kept our bills low. Like I always knew, okay, if she's working, we can at least make money. I think we maybe decided to put off kids at the time, but anyway, so that was outside of work, outside of aviation. Yeah. Sounds cliche, but probably her. Yeah.
Number one support structure, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be your significant other if you're married, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that was a huge thing. And even still to this day, I mean, she'll come in, she'll get the guys coffee, like, and it's like, coffee's huge, man. That's why you were saying you're thinking about
trying to cut back on the coffee.
I was like, what are you thinking?
I think it goes in waves. Like there's all this, first it's like all the companies trying to sell you coffee. Yeah. And now there's all these companies that are trying to tell you the coffee's bad and you should be drinking.
It's just the pendulum.
Some other concoction that's not coffee, right? And
so, but like she'll come in like, and she's super organized. She'll come in, she'll help me get organized with certain things. So even like still to this day, she makes a huge difference. And, but yeah, I mean, that's really outside of aviation. It's got to be her.
Yeah. Well, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you stopping by today and chatting and
of course.
Telling the story. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Happy to see things are going well. And where can people find you?
So our office is in Inglewood, Florida.
Yeah.
Unless you like towns with nothing fun to do, I maybe don't necessarily suggest you coming by the office. But actually, my buddy just sent me a shuffleboard. We might get it and put it in there. So
All right.
But Inglewood, 1460 South McCall Road. If anyone wanted to swing by, on the internet, obviously AvSkyJets.com. Me and all the guys in the office, the sales guys, we've all got our individual LinkedIn pages, so you can always,
cool.
find us on LinkedIn. Email, we've got, it's all, my email's Tyler at AvSky Jets. Ryan's is Ryan at AvSky Jets.
Okay.
And we've got Brendan, Enrique, Marcelo.
Cool. All the usual channels.
Yeah. All the usual channels.
Cool.
And I'll say a quick thank you to Jordan Scales, by the way.
Sure.
He connected us.
Yep.
Yeah. Saw you guys did your chat with him. That was cool.
Yep.
And I was like, hey, man.
Yeah.
He didn't plug us, so I was like, all right, I got to come in and do this on my own. That's what I was saying. If you want something done right, you got to do it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Well, it was good. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
And thanks again, Jordan, for linking us up.
Appreciate it, bro.
Yep. Thank you.
All right.
See ya.